everyone, welcome to Bobby Hair Studio. Today we have a new tutorial on how to do baby lights / strand lights all over a head of previously lifted blonding, lots of roots, different colors kind of all over. And basically this client came to me from YouTube. This is where she found me, yay! And she basically said, like, I trust you, I want to do something new and different, and I want you to do whatever you want with my hair. So we are going to start with our back of our section today. The back is one whole big piece, and I do the sides separately from where she parts. So the back I am sectioning into this little diagonal placement around the nape of the neck, and I'm going to be kind of following the line of the nape of the neck, like how her hairline works, and I'm going to be doing these little tiny strand lights / baby lights. Some of these foils are more of the larger weave, like a baby light, and some are a smaller weave like a strand light. And I really like when you're working with something like this, it's such a small amount of hair going into the foil. When you work in smaller sections, it kind of breaks up the amount of work really easily, and you can work section by section based off of how much blonding you want to put in each area of the hair. So what I'm doing here is along the nape of the neck, I am placing my foils with slightly thinner sectioning in between them. So that means that more of the hair is actually going into the foil in these nape of the neck areas, and also will be on the front and top of the head, because what that's doing is it's giving a higher concentration of these soft blonde baby lights in comparison to when I get to the middle of the head, I'm doing larger sections. Which means I'm leaving out between the foils more of that, natural, like dark blonde, light brown color that she has, which is going to allow me to have an even softer result in that kind of middle area. And what we want to do with that is we do want to create dimension. So having areas around the nape of the neck where she puts her hair up, being a little bit more of that impact blonde. Those areas also tend to come forward on the shoulders and the collarbone and give that nice soft blonde pop. So that's why I do like to concentrate a little bit more blonding here by using thinner sections, but doing the same type of wave here as I would be doing all throughout the head. That's what's really fun about baby lights and strand lights. And highlights in general is that when you place them and you work with your patterns really decide where the blonde pops and where the blonde blends. Where you're going to get more of a pop of blonde is when you condense more blonde into each foil, or you have foils closer and closer towards each other rather than having a larger space in between. And if you really want like that big blonde impact, you combine both of those methods together. So I'm playing around with how much foiling I want to be in here, because my client here wants to do something that lives well for months. And when she gets her maintenance appointments done, she doesn't feel like she has to come in. She feels like she wants to come in. Now here I've zoomed in so you guys can see exactly how tiny my weaves are. I've weaved what I want, and then I've actually taken a little extra out, left that in between the foils, and now I'm painting on my lightener. So you can see that I like to load my lightener up onto an area where I want fully saturated. I saturate the ends, and then I flick the lightener up towards the root. Because these are such baby fine pieces, and because I'm doing the feathering, this is going to have a very soft blend. Later on I still will do a shadow root, but that's more so for the sake of adding a longer last onto her foil work, so she has, again, a lower maintenance look. But you'll see that as well later. You combine a lot of these little techniques and tactics, and your foiling work will just improve so much. So please remember to keep these little tips and tricks in mind if you're new to foiling. Now what I'm doing here is I've done each side slightly diagonally to work with the nape of her neck, and I'm connecting them with a piece in the middle. But what I'm keeping in mind is that I don't want the back center of the head to be like a big dark gap, but I also don't want it to be a really big blonde gap. If you've ever done foiling before where you've separated the back down the center and you've consistently been putting the same weave in for every single foil working up the head, you may notice you actually get a really big blonde chunk in the very center of the back of the hair. And that's probably because you're starting and ending every weave with having some of that hair into the foil. So that means the very corners of your foils are always getting that blonde impact. And if they meet in the back center of the head, you're having just like this really big chunk of blonde. So that's why I like this pattern as well, because I can take each section bit by bit and time at a time and really think about how much lightener I want to have visible in this area. So I am leaving much larger sections in between these foils here, in this middle section that connects the two back ends, so that I can have more of that depth and dimension and not have so much blonde, just enough to kind of go with the flow of the look and not have a weird disconnect, but not so much that we have like a big blonde impact in the back, because again, we want the back to be very soft. We don't want her coming in for a full head of foils every time she needs to come in for her maintenance. We actually only want to do her full head once, maybe twice per year, just depending on what she's feeling. So now I am connecting those 3 areas with the next one, which is just behind the ear, still following that angle that I'm using from the nape of the neck. And again, this area right here, just behind the ear, I'm going to be using very teeny tiny weaves, and I'm going to be using very little hair in the foils, blending upwards with my brush as normal, because I want to ensure the softest, rootiest look possible with this. If you wanted something even softer, you could back comb a little bit, but I don't even know if there will be enough hair left in the foil for her to notice a difference. So when you're doing a super teeny tiny weave like this, you don't really have to worry as much about back combing to get that blend, because these hairs are so small that you're not really going to be able to pick them out individually from each other when the hair's all blow dried and living within itself. So I basically follow this pattern up to the back of the head. So I am going to kind of skip ahead a little bit here, because I work on my right side and then my left side, and I connect in the middle with a little bit less blonding in that middle section. So I'm just going to kind of skip ahead to the next area where I'm doing something a little bit different. So now that we have gotten up to kind of the apex of the head, kind of where the hair starts to part, I'm actually changing my foiling pattern a little bit, and I'm kind of working more horizontally. And I've decided to do this based on how I'm going to be foiling in the future when I do her maintenance appointments. I most of the time do a bit of a mohawk, and it comes down to where the hair parts plus a little extra room for those kind of greasier days where the hair tends to split open a little bit more. You don't want a big black hole in that area. You do still want to have some soft foiling to kind of blend all that in and make it look like she has a fresh full head of foils, when really we know underneath all of that there are some grown out roots. But that's why we go for something that's a little bit lower maintenance than getting a full head of foiling every time. So I'm working along with more of a mohawk sectioning, and any of these slightly wider sections I am splitting into 2 foils, so I make sure that I can get right up to the scalp with these foils and get as much time out of these little blonding pieces as I can. And there's another thing that you guys may have noticed actually with this client's hair, is she does have like patches of different color in her hair naturally. She has a little patch of natural platinums, which I like to call silver or gray hair for a lot of my clients. I call them the natural platinums, and they seem to love that. And she actually has a couple little patches of almost an auburny red tone in there, and I love to see this on clients. And that's why I really like to work baby lights into their hair, is because it looks like it's growing from the scalp like those little interesting different colored pieces that they have, and it blends the whole thing together. And since she has previous color work from another stylist just a very long time ago, probably like 9-10 months ago, we have a lot of room so that I can put in this new foiling pattern, which is what I like, and I can work with what the previous stylist has done, because she's done nice work. She has lots of blonding in the ends, she's got lots of honey colors, and I wanted to work with this client's complexion and her skin tone and work with the auburn tones that are already in her hair naturally. So we are going to be going for more of a wheat sunny blonde, something very bright, rather than aiming for something really ashy, because when a client has natural patches of red and warmth in their hair, you actually don't want to do a lot of ash tones, because the ash tones next to those red areas will look muddy, and the red areas will look brassy, and it will just look like the hair is badly done overall. Versus if you work with the coloring the client naturally has, it's going to bring out their own vibrancy in their skin and in their eyes better, and they're going to look so much healthier, and it's going to look overall way better. So if you're unsure what to do with your hair and you have natural warm tones in your hair, you should give warm tones a try. They're really, really beautiful. So I've done the right side of her head, and now I'm working onto the left side of her head. So pay attention to how teeny tiny my sections are here. They are following my client's hairline, which is on the little bit of the steeper side. It follows this steeper angle, but it's a really easy hairline to follow because it's a very clear one to follow. And it's always the best idea, in my opinion, to follow their hairline when doing any face framing highlights. This gets right up close to their skin, and it gives it the most natural fall and appeal to the hair, especially when she also wants to put her hair up. It's going to give it that really soft look. Versus when you go entirely horizontal or entirely vertical, you can get a little bit of a stripy look. This falls really nicely with their face and how their hair naturally falls. So I like to do about 3 really close together sections, and I like to double fold them so that they're totally locked in, because any hair around some hot areas like the face or the neck and with like thinner, finer hairs tends to like slip out of the foil, and if you don't double lock it in, you might get a little bit of slippage, which can cause bleach bleeds as well. So keep that in mind. If you don't double lock around those areas. And so now I'm following essentially around the face and following that angle that her hair has given me to work with, and I am sectioning slightly larger in between. Anything that comes right up to the front of her face, though, I am sectioning a little bit thinner, closer together, because I want to maintain that money piece look around her face. And when you're doing baby lights and strand lights, it's important to keep in mind how much of an impact you want your money piece to make. If you want it to be barely there, you have to follow the pattern that you've been doing with everything else for your weaving, and just make the sections of your foils a little closer and a little bit smaller so there's more blonde in that area, but not necessarily doing slices or big chunky weaves, because it's going to create this weird separation rather than a natural separation. If you want that really big chunky look, that's fantastic, but I do find that a chunky look around the face also looks good with a chunky look around the rest of the head. Versus if you give really chunky foils around the face and baby lights everywhere else, it's going to look weird and disconnected, and it might be a little bit too much for the client. And what I'm doing here is I've reached an area where I'm kind of separating the parting on the left side and making it its own section, because she parts pretty far onto the right, and I wanted to make sure that I'm not overstretching the hair to kind of like fit into foils. I'd rather just make another new little section and work with that. So I'm following the hairline on the front of the face, and I didn't really get a good angle here. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm just going to really quickly talk about my formulation rather than my patterning and sectioning, because you can't really see much of what I'm doing anyways, but it's nothing super special. It's basically what I did on the sides. So what I have here is I'm mixing a new bowl every 15 minutes, and I am using Blonde Me and 7 volume. And the reason why I'm using a 7 volume everywhere and not, I'm not amping up my volume as I go up. As you guys usually know, that if you watch my other videos, you'll see that I do level up my developer most of the time for people. But this client has a naturally light base. We're also lightening over her ends. And because we're doing such teeny tiny strands, her hair is going to lift up to a level 9.5, 10. It's going to do it. We know that. She's also told me that in her previous services with other stylists that they've told her that her hair lifts really beautifully and really well, despite her having that natural red undertone to her hair. So I have no worries about using a low volume developer because I'm using such teeny tiny strands. It's going to have good saturation and it's going to lift evenly, as well as the fact that all these foils are going to stack together and create so much insulation that they're going to stay nice and warm. So I'm not leveling up my developers. I'm just not going to do that. I want to maintain the integrity of her hair, especially going over those blonde ends. If I didn't have any blonde ends to worry about and her hair was fully virgin, fully natural, sure, I'd level up my developer, and I'd probably start with a 7 volume anyways, then do a 7 mixed with a little bit of 20, and work my way up to just 20 volume so I could pull all of it out all at once. But what we're doing today is we're just trying to make sure that we keep the integrity of her hair intact while we lighten even through the ends, because her ends weren't quite the place that we wanted them to be. However, they had some beautiful colorings. We kind of wanted to work with them but also enhance them, hence why we are brightening up some of those already blonded ends. Here is what she looks like fully foiled, and it doesn't look like a ton of foils. It's not the most foils I've ever done, but it does have a very nice impact into the hair. And these are the last foils that I put on, so I'm going to insulate them with a towel and no heat. These are what the foils look like when they are done. We've got that very, very pale yellow look, and these are the top foils. You always check the foils that you put in last and the foils that are most exposed to the open air, because those ones will have processed the least. Those will be the ones that you want to make sure are exactly at the point that you want them to be at, because when they're ready, everything else is ready to go. Now it's time for my root smudge. In my formula for my root smudge today, I'm using Schwarzkopf Vibrance, and I'm mixing an 8-19, which is a level 8-ash with a little bit of violet in there. And I've mixed that with almost equal parts of 9-4, which is a beige color. And then a little secret tip that I've learned from one of my stylists, Ethan, is that when you mix a little tiny bit less developer than you do of the color, you avoid getting that warm, rooty thing that sometimes you get. I've actually talked about it in one of my previous videos where I'm like, how is this happening? Why is this happening? It actually is working for me, and I've noticed lately that it prevents that little orangey look that you can get with some of these level 7s that are just so sensitive to any kind of developer that they want to bump up that base a little bit. So if you want to prevent your hair from bumping up the base due to the scalp heat and any of that kind of ammonia in color, then mix a little bit less of your developer than you do of your color. And the reason why I have an 8 ash and a 9 beige mixed together here for this root tap is because I want to create that soft color in between her natural and the blonde, and that's going to give her a little bit longer out of her highlight session than just putting in those baby lights right up to the root, toning them with one color and calling it a day. This is giving that soft, subtle little shadow, and it's just that detail that I find that really sets you apart as a stylist when you do put in that little extra bit of effort to give a soft appeal from their scalp down to their ends by having multiple colors in there. And I wanted to have some ash and beige together because I want to combat any natural warmth that could be left at the top of foils, as I talked about earlier. And because there's a beige in there, it's almost got this like, not dullness, but it softens a blonde, having a bit of a beige, which has like almost that brownie undertone. So it's like having a blonde root and a blonde end. The blonde end is going to look more bright and appealing and vivid compared to the blonde roots, which are going to be soft and supple and healthy looking. So it's merging the best of both worlds, Miley Cyrus. And I think that this is just a really good way to elevate your highlighting services, is to add in a beige root tap, basically on the same level as your toner, but it's not canceling colors out, it's adding in colors as well. For my blonde toner, I'm using 1.5 ounces of 9.5-1 and a 1/2 ounce of 9-55. And what I'm doing here is I am applying this toner to her mids and ends first, where all of her previous blonding had been. And the reason of that being is because when toner is fresh, you get like the most impact and the most work out of it. So you want to apply really quickly, which is kind of why I'm such a messy stylist. I apply quickly because I want to make sure that the color is all getting everywhere that I want it to in the time that I want it to, so it can work evenly everywhere. So I'm grabbing just big chunks at a time, squirting that color all the way through the mids and ends and massaging it through so it can work on neutralizing the warmer colors that are in her ends from her previous coloring services. And then her root shadow is also working at the same time, and the root shadow is on first because I want it to have the most color depositing. And then this midsection is going in second, so it has a little bit of neutralizing, but not enough time to do so much color depositing that we deepen down the color, just enough to neutralize out any brass. And then what I'm doing is, as soon as that's in, I'm mixing the rest of the toner into that middle area between the shadow root and those mids. And what I'm also doing is I'm blending it with my fingers. I'm like finger combing it through from roots down to ends, because it's going to give that especially soft root melt look that the client is really, really gonna love. It's just so soft. I can't wait to show you guys. So that's why I put on my toner a little bit differently today than I would in some of my other videos. And yeah, I can't wait to show you guys the final results, because you guys don't need to see how the whole toner is processed. So as a reminder, this is what she came in with. It's a honey color. She has lots of roots, and she has some patches of areas that are different colors, and she has a lot of her natural underneath. This is what she left with. A beautiful, bright, soft, healthy looking blonde, and she's got these little teeny tiny highlights going right up to the top. And what I really like about this is it makes her natural level like bump up half a level. She looks like she's naturally a level 8 with some blonde highlights. What do you guys think of this video? Please don't hold back in the comments. Let me know what you think. And I really appreciate all the love and support from all my followers. It really, really helps the channel out when you guys remember to like and subscribe to this channel. I have tons of other tutorials, color corrections, cutting tutorials. And if you guys like this video, please remember to go check those out and hit the notification bell if you enjoy my videos and you subscribe, because then you'll be notified whenever I drop a new one. Anyways, I hope you guys have a lovely evening. Thank you so much for sticking by my side this whole time. I love you all. I appreciate you all. Have a lovely evening.